It's Friday, April 23rd, and here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, we got a frost last night. And this is probably going to be unprecedented in terms of recorded history. Usually our last frost date is on March 23rd, and here you can see some remnants of the frost. When I woke up at 7 a.m., the roofs were all covered in solid frost. We got down to 35.4 degrees, and it's only 7:54 right now, and it's 47 degrees. So we've risen 12 degrees in the past 45 minutes. Our forecast low was 41 degrees, and I knew that wasn't going to happen. I knew we were going to fall well below that because there was going to be no winds and it was totally calm. So I'm documenting this video because I want to show you all how you can protect against a radiation frost. And this works very well because I believe I was able to save every single plant in my garden, but it comes with some caveats. Number one, this is not going to work against freezes. There are big differences between frosts and freezes. In a freeze, the air temperature is 32 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. The only way you can protect against a freeze is if you cover things up and you add some kind of internal heat source to keep the inside of the covering warmer than the outside. So you either need to blanket against like a jug of water or a warm house, or you need to put lights under it or something. That's the only way to protect against a freeze. A radiation frost generally occurs in the 32 to 36 or 37 degree Fahrenheit range and is known to take place as high up as 39 degrees Fahrenheit. And that happens when cold air condenses in low spots, and they can form frost on the tips of vegetation because the frost reaction, water actually crystallizing, demands heat. So it sucks heat out of the atmosphere. So the formation of frost will actually make the surrounding tissues of the plant artificially cooler. So you can have an official measurement of 36 degrees Fahrenheit, which they measure from around 4 feet above the ground, or when actually right along the ground or on tips of vegetation, frost can form. And that's what happened to us. We got frost formation up in the air, and I was able to insulate my entire ground against frost. And this is what I had to do. See this hose out right here? This hose, I went outside at midnight when it just dropped below 40 degrees, and I manually hosed down every single plant that I own. I soaked everything down. So all of these figs that are just recovering from our historically late hard freeze, they're finally budding out again. All of these figs I soaked down completely. Same thing goes with every single one of my container plants. I took the shower setting on my watering wand over here that you can see. I took that shower setting and I soaked down all of these plants so they were sopping wet. I soaked down all of the ground around the plants. And when I was doing that, steam was coming up from the ground because the water coming out of the hose was so much warmer than the surrounding ground, which was beginning to drop into the 30s Fahrenheit. I also hosed down every single one of my tomato plants, and I soaked down the bottoms of the garden beds, because what happens is frost typically forms against the ground. So I knew that the most likely areas that would freeze in my garden is the mulch, and that could freeze and start taking the plants with it. So they were all hosed down. All of these garden beds are soaking wet because I also used my in-ground sprinkler system to my advantage. I have one of those Rainbird sprinkler timers that allows for 4 different settings. So I took my sprinkler timer and I set it to run on my garden zones at 3 a.m., at 3:45 a.m., at 4:30 a.m., and at 5:15 a.m. So that had my two garden zones running from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. And those are generally the coldest times of the day because it's coldest right before sunrise. You can see how much water has collected on these tarps. Everything's soaked because my sprinklers were running so long. And if you keep everything wet, if you keep everything in a constant stream of wet water from that's nice and warm from the ground, you can keep everything alive. As you can see here, here are my string beans. They are not cold tolerant, but they are standing up tall and strong. They look really good. So I think my plan has worked. You can also see my corn over here. It's standing up nice and tall and strong. There's nothing drooping over there. So I think that was successful. It was a lot of work. I woke up at 3:45 a.m. just to verify everything was going according to plan and my sprinklers were running. I also took my hose and I re-soaked everything down at 3:45 in the morning. So I only got about 4.5 hours of sleep last night. But doing this, I was able to, I believe, save my entire season, because if my garden would have gotten frosted, I would have lost everything. Everything was too large to cover up. I covered up what I could, but it wasn't feasible to cover the whole garden. So usually frost damage takes several hours in order for it to set in. So what I need to do is I need to check back probably around 3 p.m. after these plants have had full exposure to the warm sun of the day to really assess the situation properly. So I'll do that once we get later in the afternoon. So it's Saturday, April 24th, and I decided to wait an entire day before I surveyed everything and make sure that there's no damage anywhere. And everything really looks great. All of my citrus, even my very tropical key lime that can't take any frost or freeze, is fine. All of my potted figs are fine. There is no damage shown to any of them. And thank God, because this really, they were really starting to bush out, and they're really coming along. This is a capper fig, so I'm even having they're the pollinating figs, so I really didn't want to lose my fig pollen for the year. And most things look really good on this side of the garden. All of my citrus is totally undamaged. I didn't even drop any fruit. Even my bananas are okay. My persimmon, which got badly defoliated in that late April 3rd hard freeze, that's coming back. My in-ground figs that got crushed in the April 3rd hard freeze are still barely doing anything. It's probably a totally lost season for them. They are starting to get a couple of leaves here and there, but overall, it's going to be very rough for these trees. They may not do anything at all for me this year, which is painful, but at least this frost didn't set them back any further. They were completely protected by the water. Then my other bananas are just fine. They're coming back, some faster than others, but they will be probably 2-3 feet tall, or maybe even taller in another couple of weeks. All of these tender string beans were completely uncovered, so they're just fine. These tomatoes all look good. There's no damage to any of them, so very thankful for that. Cherry tomatoes are really coming along, starting to get some fruits on them, so they're looking really good, really healthy, and no signs of damage on anything. So I'm beyond happy about that. And then over here we have our watermelon, which are extremely tender. Not only can they not take a frost or freeze, they don't even like temperatures below 50. So I'm happy to say that there doesn't appear to be any, they're not even upset. So I guess the temperature plunge was so brief that they're just fine. And they're happy with life. And that's good, because I have a number of watermelon and other kinds of melons. I think I have a Karaji melon and I have a cantaloupe here, and they're all very, very sensitive plants. Now here's the biggest mistake I made. This right here is my tomato bed of determinate and dwarf tomatoes. And I wanted to hedge my bets, and I also covered this with a tarp, a blue tarp. And that was a tremendous mistake, because what happened was, and I didn't even think of this, I covered it with the tarp and I had my sprinklers running for 3 hours, and then all of that water collected on the tarp and it just crushed all of my plants. So I have a bunch of them like this one right here, that completely snapped in half. So I have a lot of damage on these tomato plants because I went ahead and I had the dumb idea to cover them with a tarp. And in reality, I would have been just fine had I not done anything and just let the water run on them. But instead, I have all of these broken off pieces. Here's another piece that snapped off, and you can see these scraps of tomato over here. They're all just pieces that broke off on me yesterday. So because they were in such lousy shape, they got crushed. I had to Florida weave them all together to support them, and now they're looking pretty good that they're standing back up, but still 4 or 5 plants got damaged. I really recommend Florida weave for the determinants and dwarfs, since they only get about 2 to 3 feet tall depending on the variety, and this is a great method. I'll make sure to link to a video above where I show you how to do that. My corn was totally uncovered, and that looks great. My peppers all look good. I tarped these as well, but they were small enough that none of them broke. Again, don't tarp and run sprinklers. If you are going to tarp, make sure that you use something that is agricultural fabric that will let the water run through. Do not use a tarp that will collect water. And then I have more cucumbers, more tomatoes. I have my zucchini. Everything is great, completely undamaged. Even the sweet potatoes are completely undamaged, and they look good too. So overall, I'm very thrilled that I was able to escape any damage from this really incredibly, possibly record-breaking late frost event. So for all of you out there, if you have one of those marginal radiation frosts at 32 to 36 degrees Fahrenheit, you can simply run your sprinklers and wet everything down to protect your crops. It really does work. And hopefully you won't have to deal with anything like this, but keep that weapon in your back pocket in case you ever need to pull it out, because it could save your garden when frosts come so incredibly late. So everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Hey Dale, just say hi to everybody real quick. Hi Dale. Good morning. So everybody, thank you so much for watching today's video. I sure hope it was helpful. If it was, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe for future updates and more videos like these. If you're curious about anything that I use in my garden, all of the products are linked in my Amazon storefront in the video description. Thank you all again so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. I'm about to show you the most excited dog in history. Dale? Are you hungry? Yeah? You're hungry? Where are you leading me? You want something? Oh, it must be breakfast time. It must be breakfast time. Dale, I made you ground rabbit with white rice and carrots. You want some? Okay, buddy. Okay, it's breakfast time. Look at that tail go.